Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future, making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams EcoBank and our energy. Way, a better Africa. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future, making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams EcoBank and our across Africa. A better Africa across our continent has begun. Across the world, shifting our focus to a better horizon, to a better connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow, making a brighter tomorrow. Built by our dreams EcoBank and our across Africa. A better Africa has begun. Across the world, shifting our focus to a better horizon, to a better connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow, making a brighter tomorrow. Built by our dreams EcoBank and our across Africa. Across our Africa has begun. Across the world, we are shifting our focus to a better horizon, to a better connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow, making a brighter tomorrow. Built by our dreams EcoBank and our across Africa. Across our Africa has begun. Across the world, we are shifting our focus to a better horizon, to a better connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow, making a brighter tomorrow. Built by our dreams across Africa. Across Africa has begun. Across shifting our focus to a better connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow, making a brighter. Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future, together. EcoBank, a better way, a better Africa. Across Africa, a new era has begun. Shifting our focus to a new horizon, connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow. Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future, together. EcoBank, a better way, a better Africa. Across Africa, a new era has begun. Shifting our focus to a new horizon, connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow. Today, Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future. Together. EcoBank. A better way, a better Africa. Across Africa, a new era has begun. Shifting our focus to a new horizon, connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow. Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future. Together. EcoBank. A better way, a better Africa.
Morning, everyone. You're welcome to another amazing episode of my SME growth series. Today we'll be looking at how to enhance your cash flow by transitioning to solar energy. Said earlier, good morning everyone, and you're welcome to another amazing episode of my SME growth by transitioning to solar energy. Our speaker for today is Abraham Mohammed. A little about Abraham: he is the co-founder and CEO of Rainer Energy, a clean move, upfront cost barriers, and provide SMEs and communities with solar systems on a periodic lease and subscription basis. Abraham started his career in research and product development at Unilever and went on to spend nearly executing strategy, transformation, and operation projects as SME energy challenges, benefits to solar. I mean, we find ourselves in Nigeria and times we don't have light, and solar is just the best option. So if you're on this webinar and you know someone else that is not, you should let them know that they should join in now, because this is important for every SME. Now I'd like to welcome our speaker, Abraham Mohammed. Good morning, Mr. Abraham. You have.
Welcome today to another episode of my SME Growth series. So today I'm going to talk to you about how transitioning to solar would enable you enhance your cash flow. I'll also talk about some case studies around people that have transitioned to solar, and I'll also tell you how you can pick the right solar system. So the reality is that the power crisis in Nigeria is an anchor holding back our growth. Imagine it's the Olympics, you're Usain Bolt and you're trying to run a 100 meters race, and then you run ankle weights. It's impossible for you to set a new world record. The reality is that many of you SMEs are trying to run your race and trying to grow as fast as possible, but the power crisis is truly and really holding down your growth and holding down your aspirations. So I believe that SMEs, under the right circumstances, especially with affordable power, would be able to reach their true potential. And so I'm so excited to talk to you guys through how we can get there together. So I'll start by talking a little bit about myself and about my company, Rainer. My name is Abraham Mohammed. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Rainer Energy. I've spent the last 7 years of my life across energy, manufacturing, and technology sectors, working for the likes of PwC and Unilever in that process. And I think we did a reverse japa, so I moved back from London about a year ago to start Rana in Nigeria. Rana means son in Hausa, and the reason why we did it is because we fundamentally believe that energy should not be for the privileged few, but an essential service being delivered in a cleaner, more reliable, and more affordable way. So what is Rana? Rana is an AI energy ecosystem that provides companies like yourself with solar systems on a monthly subscription basis. Over the last 12 months, we have formed partnerships with a lot of respectable partners, including Techstars, ARM, NSIA, the Infrastructure Bank, to name a few. And we've actually delivered over 1 megawatt of solar systems for our customers and have a pipeline of 20 megawatts. So for context, the average SME uses between 5 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts of energy on a monthly or annual basis. The harsh reality is the power sector in Nigeria has failed SMEs. On average, you get 12 hours of power from the grid. Now, this 12 hours is not consistent. It's not, predictable. It can be 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., stop for 4 hours, come back at 3, and continue. And so it's really, really hard to plan your days and plan your business. So that's the first thing. It's very unreliable. The second issue is because of the unreliability, a lot of you businesses have had to be innovative. You've had to take on the cost of buying backup generators, either with petrol or with diesel. Now, the issue is the cost of these backup fuel generators have surged 5 times in the last 4 years. Right now, a liter of diesel is over 1,000 naira, and a liter of petrol is over 600 naira. Now, to make matters worse, there's also fuel scarcity. So even if you want to buy this petrol or buy the diesel, you have to spend hours and hours on the queue trying to get there. Now, what has this meant for your businesses? When you look at your cost of sales or your cost of your business, over 40% is attributed to energy costs. That's 40% that could be spent in more inventory, 40% that could be spent in more technology, 40% that could be spent in improving your customer service. But unfortunately, we're spending 40% on energy costs. It's impossible to grow your business with that level of cost. So it's a miracle how Nigerian SMEs are able to do so. For context, Nigerian SMEs spend 3 to 4 times more on power than the average European business. And so we are really thriving despite the odds. Now, what has this meant for the economy? So the SMEs contribute over 60% of the GDP of Nigeria. And as you can see, the cost of this power is over $26 billion, which is about double the Nigerian budget. So if we're able to solve power, the economy will grow faster, your businesses will grow faster, and the country will be better for it. For your businesses, the challenge of power affects you in at least 4 different ways. Number 1, it impacts your sales. So imagine you're a barber and the power goes off and you have cordless barbing kits. What happens? You have to go, switch on your generator, start again. Time is money, and time that is lost in trying to get your power sorted out is money that you're losing. Secondly, some people are doing manufacturing, and so you need a constant power to produce your goods. Similar fashion, the power goes out and you're losing revenue. So it is declining your sales. Conversely, it's also increasing your costs, because as I've mentioned, you're spending 3 to 4 times more than the average European business on energy. The costs keep on rising, and so you have to then take those costs on your OPEX. Or what some people do is they try and then invest in other technologies, maybe a standing fan, maybe other things to make your customers more comfortable. This is also increasing your cost, things that you shouldn't need to invest in. These are costs that you could have used on more productive things for your business. So the other thing is customer service. How do you serve your customers if it's a hot environment? How do you serve your customers if you don't have no power? So a lot of businesses need power to serve their business, to serve their customers. And so it's very, very important that you're able to get that power. Otherwise, your customer service reduces. And then finally, the stress and the headache of thinking about the entire operations. And so the reality is, when you look at the power crisis, it's affecting your sales, it's making things more expensive, it's making you lose customers, and it's stressing you out. This cannot happen. This is not sustainable, and we will need to change this. Enter solar systems. So solar systems are essentially your solar panels and your batteries taking sunlight into your solar panels to create power. This can then be stored in the batteries to ensure that you have constant power throughout the day when you need it. Now, what does having constant power mean for your business? Number one, it will mean you have an improved cash flow. Why? Because you have more time to serve your customers. You have more time to sell. You have more time to deliver your service, as opposed to spending that time looking for alternative power solutions. It's already there. It's constant. Two, it attracts investments. So there's a lot of foreign companies, foreign governments that are very, very interested in investing in sustainable companies. And so if you can, as an SME, can say, hey, we are trying to transition to solar, we're trying to be more green, that makes you more attractive to foreign investors. Number three, your customer service. So now, with increased solar, with more power, you can serve your customers better because now they feel comfortable to come to your shop, they feel comfortable being around you, and they feel comfortable using your services. And then, personally, I know a lot of people have the same issue, is generators are very toxic, they're very noisy, and they actually affect the way you think. And so transitioning away from backup fuel generators actually creates a cleaner environment where you can serve your customers better. Let's go through a case study. So, as I've mentioned, Rana has deployed about 1 megawatt of solar systems. Some of our customers include hospitals, schools, and farms, right? And so I'll give you a case study of a 100 kilowatts system that we put in. So before we came in, the customer had a 100 kVA generator, as you all know. On NEPA alone, they were a band A customer. So on NEPA alone, they were spending over 8 million naira on NEPA annually, and over double of that, so 15 to 16 million naira annually on backup diesel fuel, which is on average between 500 to 1,000 liters of fuel every month for this customer. In addition to that, this didn't mean they had 24 hours of power. This didn't mean they could serve the customers every time. They still had to switch off the generator from time to time. And so for the hospital, we were able to transition the 100 kVA generator to an 80 kilowatt solar system. So what was that in practice? It was 80 kilowatt of solar panels, 80 kilowatt inverter, and 160 kilowatt hours of batteries. When they put in the system, we're able to reduce that diesel dependency by over 70%. The reality is solar isn't 24/7. The grid goes down, you have storage. Even with storage, it might last for a few hours. So you can get, with our system, between 16 to 20 hours of constant power for that customer. And so the 4 hours where you don't have constant power, if there's NEPA, great, they don't need to use a generator. Or if there isn't NEPA, then they have to switch on the generator for 2 to 4 hours. For this customer, we had provided them with a subscription. And with the subscription cost, they were able to reduce their total energy bill by 40%. In addition, they've reduced the toxic fumes in the environment, and they've increased their uptime to 24 hours. So 20 hours of that provided by solar, and 4 hours by NEPA or diesel. Since they've put in the system, the revenue or the footfall in the hospital has over doubled, and revenue have also increased significantly. But more importantly, we're going to reduce that cost by 40%. This is an example on how we're able to transition the customer from a 100 kVA generator to an 80 kilowatt solar system. Now, some of you might be asking, oh, why did I go from 100 kVA to 80 kilowatts? The reality is that, first of all, kVA and kilowatts are slightly different units. And so you actually need, for the same amount of kVA, you need less kilowatts. In addition to that, what you find is that some customers have 100 kVA generators but aren't actually using 100 kilowatts of power. So as I mentioned, Rana has deployed over 1 megawatt of solar systems, and we have a pipeline of over 20 megawatts. Our customers range from megawatt scale customers to 5-10 kilowatt customers. People think that solar can't power certain things. The reality is that it can't power anything. It just depends on the size and how long you want it to last for, right? So when you look at the solar system, your solar panels based on the sun, and then your batteries based on your storage. The more storage you have, the longer your system can last for once the sunlight goes off. So there's no limitation of what your solar system can power if it's the right size. So it can power a big manufacturing client. We've seen installations of over 100 megawatts for one customer. So just to be clear, there's nothing that a solar system cannot power. It just depends on how it's designed. A lot of people get very worried about the high cost of the solar systems. What we try to do is to think about it slightly differently. Solar is an investment, and so it's not a like-for-like comparison typically. So you cannot compare if you have to bring in for a 10 kilowatt system, maybe 8 million naira upfront, right? You can't compare that 8 million naira upfront to what you pay on a daily or a monthly basis for diesel. It will obviously be a lot more expensive. And so what we've tried to do here is to actually break down what the cost per unit of power is for the different sources. So you know how you buy your unit of electricity for grid. If you are band A, you are spending 200 naira. If you are band B and below, you are spending 80 naira. What we've done here is to actually give it a similar comparison for solar and other examples of alternative power solutions. So band B, 70 naira and below. Solar is actually less than 200 naira per kilowatt hour, right? So it's cheaper than band A. How do you get to this number? Well, if you look at the total cost of the investment, and then look at that over the amount of hours in a year that the solar system will be run, multiply it by the amount of years the system will be run by, then you're able to get an actual cost per kilowatt hour of energy being used, which is less than band A. Okay. When you look at the cost of a solar system, you might see you're trying to put a 10 kilowatt system and it costs 8 million naira. When you compare that 8 million naira cost to your monthly cost of diesel, where you're paying maybe 300k or 400k per month, you might say, wow, it's going to take, it's 20 times more expensive. So I might as well just keep on paying my 400k, 500k a month as opposed to paying 8 million naira upfront. Or you might never have the 8 million naira upfront in the first place, and so solar appears to be expensive. So what we've tried to do here is to actually work out what is the unit cost of a solar system, similar to your unit of your energy for your grid when you're paying your grid bills. When you do this math, you then realize that the actual cost per kilowatt hour of the grid is higher than the cost per kilowatt hour of solar, which is why when you then compare with people that use backup fuel generators, that number is over 350 naira per kilowatt hour. If you compare the cost per kilowatt hour with your petrol gensets, which is about 280 naira per kilowatt hour, or your diesel genset, which is about 480 naira per kilowatt hour, it becomes increasingly clear that solar is by far the cheaper option. Why has this happened? Why is solar now cheaper actually? So over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of innovation in the solar space, which has driven down the cost of the solar panels, which has driven down the cost of the batteries. Now, reality is, with the FX situation in Nigeria, it masks this reduction. But, as I said, as the FX stabilizes, you can start seeing the real impact of the month-on-month reduction in the cost of a solar system because of the innovation in the market, right? And so in theory, it makes sense when you say, okay, well, you've broken down the cost per kilowatt hour, and actually it's cheaper than band A, it's cheaper than petrol, it's cheaper than diesel, but maybe I don't have the upfront costs. I don't have that investment waiting to put into a solar system. What do I do? Now, aside from the fact that if you are running a diesel generator, your payback time on that capex can be less than 5 years, probably 3 years or lower, right? For example, for comparison, in a European country, the payback time is 10 years. So because of how much money and how expensive your OPEX is, you can actually pay back the capex of that solar system in less than 5 years. But to your fears, you might not be able to afford the upfront cost. So what I've done now is I'm going to give a comparison of two options that exist. There's the capex upfront, and I'll explain what that looks like. This is when you actually buy the system, and a lease to own, or a subscription, or a cost per kilowatt hour. It's all service models. So I'm going to compare the capex outright with the service model using 6 different features. The first feature is investment. Who makes the investment in the solar assets? In the capex outright model, you as a business would have to make the investment 100% for the solar system. Whereas in the service model, in some cases you actually pay zero upfront and just your monthly or your annually bills, or in some other cases you might pay a percentage. It might be 10, it might be 20, it might be 30%, whatever you agree with your service provider. So that's the investment. Second is, what other costs do you pay for? So if it's capex outright, then if there's any issues that happen, any maintenance work, any insurance, all of those costs have to be borne by the customer because of the system belongs to you. Whereas if it's a service model, depending on the service agreement, you might actually not have to pay any additional cost because those costs will be covered by your service fee during the service period. Now, post-service period, then you will now be responsible for the cost of, say, maintenance, say, insurance, or other added costs that you haven't had to cover during your service period. Third, savings. In the capex model, you make savings on your OPEX. So you've invested the money for the solar system, and so that has meant you don't have to pay as much money for your power, which is grid or generators, and so you start making money already from day one because of your OPEX is reduced, right? And as I mentioned, this can lead to a payback time of less than 5 years. In some cases, as low as 2 to 3 years, your payback of your system because of this significant reduction in your OPEX. In the service model, similarly, you have savings from day one because your OPEX has now reduced from what you were paying before, so maybe 30-40% reduction, right? And so what this means is by putting the system, regardless of if you own it outright or you go through a service model, you will see savings from day one. Managing the system. So depending on the size of the system, you might need a technical team to help you monitor and manage it, or you might be able to do it on your own. But in any case, the system needs to be managed. It needs to be managed from cleaning the panels. It needs to be managed from checking the connections from time to time, making sure everything is working fine. So if you own the system outright, then you are responsible for the quality delivery of that system. If there's any issues, you have to either meet the OEM, the person who installed it for you, or whatever thing, but it is your responsibility. And in larger systems, you might have to maintain a team to manage those systems for you. Whereas in a service model, the service provider is typically responsible for managing the systems during the service period. Post-service period, then the customer might now have to take on the management of the systems by themselves. Ownership. Who owns the assets? Now, I know we have a very ownership-driven model in Nigeria. We like to own things. We own our house. You own the land your business is on. You own the business. You own the water that I put in. You own all the infrastructure, right? Which is great if you can afford it. And so for the solar systems, in the CAPEX model, you actually own the solar systems outright. It is your assets. Whereas in the service model, depending on the service type, the asset belongs to the service provider until it's transferred to you if it's a lease-to-own model, or it never gets transferred to you, and it's always going to be property of the service provider. System performance. In a CAPEX model, the system performance is the responsibility of the owner of that system, which is the business, right? However, if you do get a very good system, that should reduce the performance issues that you have, or you should be able to call them if there's any issues, and they might try and help you look at it. But it is your responsibility to be proactive and solving any issues with the performance that you have with your system. Whereas in a service model, the performance issues is the responsibility of the service provider. And more times than not, they actually have access to the performance of your system. So even before you call them, they can already be proactive and ensure that the issues with the performance of the system have been fixed. I've spoken through the benefits of a solar system, so I hope that's gotten you excited. I've also given you options on how you can get a system. I hope that's gotten you even more excited. But I have to throw a bit of caution. Because of the high upfront costs, people, or the lack of knowledge of what a good system is, there's a possibility, and as a business, you might go and acquire a system that is not a good system. It might come across cheaper, and so it's very attractive for you to buy. But the cost of a poor system can be very harmful on your business. Number one, it will most likely cost you more in the long run. Because of any issues the system has, you have to replace your inverter, your battery from time to time to time. And by the time you look at over a 5 to 10 year period, you'd have replaced your system enough times that the total cost of ownership of that system is actually larger than if you were to get a really good system. So that's one, and that's cost. Safety. We've always heard the stories of a church burning down, a market burning down, a house burning down because of electrical fires. I cannot stress it enough how dangerous a solar system fire can be for your business, for the people around, and for the environment. You can't just switch off a solar system, especially if there's sun. It will continue generating power, and so if there's a fire outbreak, the fire will keep on growing and growing and growing. And so I stress that it is very important to consider the safety impact of having a poor systems. Lives can be at risk. And the third and final is the system sizing. I've seen situations where people have gotten a solar system, but it's the wrong size, and so it keeps on tripping off. It can't power the things that you think it can power, right? Even when people have done a load separation, there might be other power items that have been missed out. And so this system is actually not enough it's not actually enough for the power requirement that you have. If you're lucky, you may be able to scale and just add a few more inverters or a few more batteries. But if you're unlucky, you have to replace the entire system again. So it is very, very, very important that you do not fall into the trap of having a poor, cheap, wrongly designed system. How do you actually pick the right system? I have to take it into two different ways. The first is a balancing act, getting the right size of system. And when you're thinking about the right size of system, it's typically three things you're considering. The first thing is, how much of the load are you trying to transition to solar? 100%, 80%, 50%, only critical part of load. So that's the first thing, the amount of load that you're trying to move to solar. What we see sometimes is people transition only the priority load, right? So for example, if you're a hospital, you might only transition the critical equipment in the business or in the hospital, right? In some cases, you want the entire business to be on solar. So your air conditions, everything in the business needs to be on solar, right? And so it's very important that you ask your installer these questions and you decide how much of your load do you want to be on solar. What we've also seen is people who get scalable solar systems are able to start with priority and over time add more capacity to that solar system, enabling them to then take all the load that they need. So it's not a either or. It's just something to consider, that how much of the load and how do you and do you need to increase that load over time. That's the first thing. Second thing is the budget. And so in theory or in reality, you might be able to only afford 50%. Unfortunately, what that means is that you have to design for that 50%. But as I've mentioned, if you get the right systems, you can actually scale beyond that 50% to 100% as time progresses. So really, it's a balancing act. Balancing your load and your budget to get the desired outcomes for yourself, which is increased power reliability and reduced energy costs. So that's the first thing on choosing the right solar system for your business. The second aspect is the type of system. So when you say solar system, what does that mean? It's the solar panels, it's the inverter, it's the battery, it's the electrical accessories, thunder arrestor, the cables you're using, your surge protectors, and every other thing that feeds into the electricals of your solar system. So there's a few things that we try to tell customers to look out for when you're picking a solar system: the quality, the reliability, the level of service. So when I say service, after sales service, if you buy that system, are you going to be able to find the person that sold that system to make any changes, to make any improvements? And the warranty, right? Yes, there are suppliers that will say it's a 10-year warranty, it's a 5-year warranty, but is there actually a number you can call to actually exercise that warranty? Probably not. So these are things that you need to check for. When the installer puts a solar system, ensure that they confirm to you how much power is being generated. The second thing is the batteries. We prefer fast charge batteries, so fast charge lithium ion batteries. These are batteries that can charge from 0 to 100 in less than 3 hours. And then in addition, fire suppressants. So especially in our larger deployments, we always tell the customer to ensure that they get systems that have active fire safety mechanisms. All of these things are very, very important in ensuring the overall safety and longer use of your system. So it's important that you ask these questions to your installer, because they might try to cut corners, they might not put an arrestor there, they might not put a surge protector, they might use wrong size cables, and so if anything, the cable catches fire. So all of these things need to be interrogated with your supplier to ensure you are minimizing the risk of fire and getting the best out of your system. Other factors that we consider include remote monitoring. So for us, remote monitoring is very, very critical, because with this you can actually see the performance of your system as time progresses. So you can see are you getting the benefit of the system? Is it charging at the right time? Is it discharging at the right time? Is it lasting for as many hours as it needs to last? And if there's any issues with that, the alarms automatically can come as part of the remote monitoring, and so you can fix things proactively. Solar systems need to be proactively managed. If you wait until the system is damaged, the cost of replacing that system is often too high, right? And then you've invested the money and your money has gone away. So spend a little bit of money more for fire safety, for remote monitoring, improves the use and the service period of your solar system. It goes without saying that you need to use a trusted installer. Ask them the right questions about the efficiencies, questions about the warranty, questions around questions around the term of use, questions that would allow you to get the right system for you. We're coming to the end of the episode, and just to recap, we spoke about how power crisis is an anchor holding back your growth. We spoke about how the lack of power affects your sales in a negative way, makes it lower, how it increases your costs, how it makes it hard to save your customers, and how it's actually more toxic. We spoke about how transition to solar can improve your revenue, because now, first things is saving time. Time spent looking for alternative power is now time spent serving your customer, and so you get more revenue from that.
Across
Thank you very much, Mohammed. That was really, really good. I was looking to hear something because I had a question about fire incidents that have to do with solar, because I had heard about one where someone's house got burned because of solar, but you properly explained that. But we have a few questions here that I would like for you to take, but thank you very much. That's very, very insightful. These are questions and things that people probably don't even think about when trying to get solar. But the first question I have here for you is, what are the key factors to consider when choosing a solar energy provider?
Yeah, thank you, Jamaica, for that question. So it's a really good question. I think it's a question that a lot of us always have. How do you pick a good solar energy provider? So I think it's two things, right? So you break it down. One is the systems, so the type of systems that you are trying to buy, right? It's always good to get recommendations. So what people have used, the early adopters have solar for multiple years, right? So you check with them and say, hey, you're trying to buy this system they've used, has it lasted long enough? Because there's nothing better than real world experience, right? What we found is certain systems, solar panels, batteries don't work well in the Nigerian context. And so even if it's internationally rated, when it comes to Nigeria, it just doesn't work as efficient because of the situations in the country. So very important to check for real life examples. So if you don't have anyone, then the installer that's trying to provide you the system, ask him to give you references that you can speak to. So that's super, super important. I think the second thing is you got to do your research. You got to sort of understand, okay, what type of inverter, what type of battery, is it a long-lasting battery, is it a short-lasting battery, how quickly does it get replaced? And so it's very, very important that you sort of do that level of research, right? And so this is from a solar system perspective. But from an installer perspective, everybody and their friends and their brothers and their sisters all say they're solar installers these days. So how are you able to find a trusted installer, a trusted provider that you can actually use? So I think one of the first things that we typically say to the customer is, check their reputation. Very, very important, right? So not just that they have installed solar systems, but the process that they've installed solar systems. So it's very important you ask the right questions. You ask about your solar arrestor, you ask about the type of cables that they use, so that we can catch them out if they haven't, done the right diligence, right? So asking the right questions allows you to really understand the level of service. I think secondly as well is the type of systems that they deploy, right? And so if it's familiar systems that at least that they've probably done some training, or you can ask them, have they been trained? Right, so we know a lot of solar system providers actually train staff. So they come to Nigeria and they run trainings on it. So check if have you been trained, have you been certified? Can you confirm to me that you've done those level of trainings and things? It's very, very important that you go through this process because, as I've mentioned, the cost of a poorly installed system, the cost of a poor system is not just financial, but it can actually be safety and health of the lives of people around you.
Thank you very much, Abraham. Another question I have for you here is how can SMEs access their, assess their current energy usage and identify areas where solar energy can be most effective?
Look, that's a very, very good question. We don't expect SMEs to have limitless budgets, right? You have only X amount of money, and so it's very important that you prioritize your expenses and to ensure that it's minimized and it gets the most value for money, the most impact that you require, right? So super, super aligned there. So I think we say this a couple of things, right? I think first thing is what everyone calls the energy audits, which is essentially, if you have a small team, you can essentially go and check all the load requirements across your business. So if it's a fan, if it's an air conditioner, if it's a dryer, whatever it is, you can actually do it yourself and just check the back of the appliance and you see what the load rating is. Or you can get an expert, an installer that can come and sort of do that check for you. So this is like a base level checking your equipment and seeing what's the level of a load that it can provide. So that's sort of the first thing people typically do. Once you get that, you table it out and then you might discount it. So you might say, okay, well, I'm not going to have all my lights on at the same time. I'm going to have all my air conditioning on at the same time. It's going to be like 70%. And so you then get the actual effective load. So that's it's a manual way of doing it, but it's a cheap way and gets you sort of 80-90% of the answer. Second way is people put data loggers. So it's a little piece of an equipment where you literally go to your mains output in your building or in your store and then you log it. So what essentially does is it will be recording the amount of load throughout the day, right? So you may leave it there for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and that just allows you to see like a really good load profile. So for example, you might realize that actually the customer is only using energy during the day, and so at nighttime it's the load is near zero, right? So as a result, you can use less batteries. So that's something some other people do, is they use data loggers. I think when we look at prioritization, so we typically go for systems that are scalable. And so we say, well, if you're going for a scalable system, then how do we focus on the actual powering the items that drive your sales, right? So not everything needs to be powered. So if it's a hospital, then maybe your fridge, some of your wards, maybe you take away the sockets. So we always go and say, we ask them the question, what can you not do without that would affect your sales? So it's not just saying, oh, you want everything switched on, right? So that level of prioritization. And then, as I mentioned, as time progresses, you can then, depending on your budget, you can then add on more load. But I think prioritize based on what drives sales, what's taking most of your costs. So, for example, what we found is we had a customer. They had a tractor that was electrically powered tractor, right? And so if every time they connected it took a lot of draw. So instead, it's like, you know what, we're going to only have the tractor switched on when there's NEPA, right? That's when we're going to charge it. We're not going to use the diesel for it. So that way they were able to say, okay, we're not going to size a larger system for a tractor because it's only infrequently used. So look at things that are used frequently. So it's not enough that you have a system you use once in a blue moon, right? Once in a blue moon system, then you can create a bespoke solution for them. Maybe you switch on the generator for 10 minutes to charge it, 30 minutes to use it. So look at the frequency of use, look at the things that drive your greatest sales. I think those are sort of two key areas that can help you to prioritize your systems.
All right, Abraham. Another question I have here, and I think this is very important. How easy is it to maintain solar panels in Nigeria, given the climate and environmental conditions that we have? What do people have to do to maintain their solar systems, solar panels?
Look, really, really good question, right? I think whilst the maintenance and operations of a solar system is easier than your generators, it does still need to be maintained, right? And this is why we try to suggest that you have remote monitoring inside it. What remote monitoring allows you to do is to see the reduction of your load or of your solar generation as time progresses, so you can see, oh, your system is not adequately maintained. But there's a couple of things. I live in Abuja, and so we know how it can get very dusty, right? And so if there's dust on your panels, what does that mean is the efficiency of the panels would reduce, not because the panels are any worse off, it's just because there's not enough surface area because it's covered by dust. So having periodic cleaning of your panels, especially in the dry season. In the wet season, it's not so much because you have the rain to wash it off, but especially during the dry season on Harmattan, we probably recommend every quarter, every month, at the very maximum, but probably every quarter is enough to just have someone go on your roof and wash your panels. Very, very important to do so. So the second thing that we see is depending on the type of batteries you have, right, you might need to get your batteries replaced. But what we tend to do is to ensure, if you do have batteries indoors, then you ensure it's a cool environment. You put a fan in it so it doesn't overheat, right? Another thing that is sort of counterintuitive is don't let your system die. Like, so don't let the battery run to zero, because of it actually takes a lot more for you to charge it back from zero to, say, 50 or 100%, as opposed to switching it up at like 20-30%. Well, obviously, how would you know if it's 20-30% if you don't have remote monitoring, right? So it's like a chicken and egg situation. So I think it's sort of important to clean the panels, sort of every quarter, particularly around the dry season period. If your inverter batteries are indoors, ensure it's in a well-ventilated place. You have a fan, you have an air conditioned unit around it, just so it keeps it cool and optimal performance. And obviously, then your system choices, right? So the better the system, the less you have to do from a maintenance standpoint, because a lot of the functionality is already built in. And obviously, if you do have a good service provider, then they can also come into the routine maintenance check for you. Thank you.
All right, Mohammed, thank you very much. Great reply. Quick one. What potential risks are associated with solar energy investments in Nigeria, and how can businesses mitigate them?
Risks, right? I think we are in an inherently risky environment, so it's super important to consider those risks. So there's a couple of things, right? We put a solar system in a farm, right? And within the first week, someone had stolen all the cables from the farm. So it was like a joke, right? But look, these things happen. So there is a real risk of theft. So we always ask the customers to say, look, how secure is your environment? You put a solar in the market that's very accessible. The roofs are very accessible, so anyone can literally just come, take your solar panels and go. In such situations, we try to tell you, please if you can, put the solar panels back into your shop and lock it, and then in the morning you switch it, you lay it back on, right? So there's a real and present risk of theft, right? That's one. Second thing that we see obviously is in the risk of fire, right? So if it's not in a well ventilated place, if you've used the right system, if you've used the wrong type of installation, wrong sizing, all of those things can sort of lead to fire, right? So it's something that you should sort of actively be considering. Then there's a risk of buying substandard systems, right? And you wouldn't know. So it's not like you've set out to buy a substandard system. You might just have met a non-trusted provider who is selling you panels that have been used for 10 years already in China, and it's already in the last legs, and they just polish it up to look like new. So how do you mitigate against bad systems? Or you go buy your dry cell batteries, and essentially the batch is already pretty much done. So you wonder why is it dying very frequently. So there's the poor systems that you might inadvertently buy because of you've just been duped by someone. So those are sort of some of the active risks that we see. Obviously the poor installation as well. So I know we are not a very insurance focused people. We believe that there's more things to spend your money on. But if you are going to invest in solar, we strongly recommend to get a level of insurance. And the truth is that the insurance providers actually very, very small. Like the cost, and it's usually like a couple percent of the total cost. So it's not material enough, right? So we suggest, please, as much as possible, try and get a level of insurance, and we can obviously recommend insurance providers to you that you can use. So that's the first thing, insurance. I think second thing is, resist the urge to just go to the markets, and meet some random person that buy the solar system. Try and go to a reputable organization that if anything goes wrong, you can go back to the person that sold it to you, and then and get a refund, or get a different system, right? So try and buy things from reputable companies. And the third thing is obviously really interrogate the installer. So sometimes the system is fine, but it's just been poorly installed, right? And that's just a factor that can happen because there might not be enough trained people in your environment. So ensure you've asked the right questions of the provider to ensure that they know what they're doing, and they can install your system in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. We still have more questions coming in. Some people have joined late, so they have their questions coming. I hope you're still able to take more questions. The one I have here now is, what are the latest solar technologies available in Nigeria, and how can they benefit SMEs?
Yes, so there's a few things that have happened over the last few years, right? There's been a lot of innovation in the solar space, sort of over the last 10 years, really. One thing that we're really seeing is high capacity panels, which is essentially for the same area of panels, you have a more wattage, right? So that's getting more value for money for the exact same space. So that's one thing that we're seeing coming to the market. And so for a long time this wasn't the case. So you could just say, oh, how many panels, how many batteries that you have. But now actually it's no longer just the number of panels, but it's the wattage of the panels, it's the size of those panels that can actually let you get you more value. Same from a battery perspective. A lot of innovation has happened in that space. And so for the same two batteries that you'd have had in the past, you can get a lot more battery power from it, right? So I think it's no longer enough to ask how many batteries or how many panels. It's actually what is the capacity of the battery. So is it a 5 kilowatt hour battery? Is it a 1 kilowatt hour battery? What's the kilowatt hour of the battery? Just not how many batteries am I getting, because that's what we always get to. I want 5 batteries, I want 6 batteries. Okay, what size of batteries are you talking about, right? So quite important to then ask those type of questions. Secondly is not just how many panels, but actually what's the wattage of those panels. So you can then track, okay, the wattage of your panels, the battery capacity, to then see, this is the size. So this is something that we've seen sort of in the market coming in more recently. The other thing is remote monitoring. So we've seen a lot of providers now have a level of remote monitoring where you might have an app, where you might have a way of knowing sort of how much battery life you have, how much solar is being provided. So this is stuff that we are seeing more common in the market. And the good thing is, as these technologies are coming in, they are not significantly more expensive because of the prices are actually also dropping. right? So you really, when you compare the old systems and newer systems, the price increase might not be scary, right? You might still be able to afford them, especially if it's in a service model. So quite important to sort of check for these new innovations, because they would essentially save you more money in the long term.
All right, we still have more questions. Like I said, thank you very much for. The next question I have is, what's the lifespan for solar energy, and how often should the batteries be changed for a business to get the best results from their investment? I mean, it's a big investment, thinking about how much they spend. So what is the lifespan for a typical solar panel, and how often do they have to change batteries to get the best results, their money's worth?
No, it's an excellent question. Lifespan, and this is why we typically say, get to providers that you can hold their chests if it doesn't reach the requirement at the state, right? They might say there's a warranty of 5 years. They might say there's a 10-year warranty, but you have nobody to call to actually exercise your rights of those warranties. So I think there's two aspects to it. So there is the actual performance of the solar panel. And actually, the standard these days is you have 25 years performance of your solar panel. So your solar panel should work for 25 years. At the top end, we see some people providing solar panels up to 30 years. Now, this doesn't mean it's going to be providing 100% for the next 25, 30 years. There's going to be a level of degradation, right? Typically, we see about 1.5% degradation on an annual basis. So, which means if it's a 20-year use of it, then you have to expect like a 30% degradation over that period, right? So, which means at year 20, your panels are working only about 70% of the peak capacity, right? So that's the first thing, but it still generates, so it's not the end of the world sometimes, right? So that's the first thing that we say is, from a solar panel perspective, on a good day, you can get probably between sort of 20 to 25 years of relatively good performance before you need to sort of change it, right? So that's the first thing. The second aspect is your inverters. So there's typically like three pieces of equipment, right? There's the solar panels, there's the inverters, there's the battery. Inverters, typically we see 10 years. Right, so your inverters can last sort of good working condition for 10 years before they have to be replaced. Some inverters last a little bit longer. They can sort of go through to 20-25 year mark, but 10 years is sort of on average what we see in terms of the performance of the system. Now, obviously, caveat is if you go and buy sort of a system that's already been pre-used for a few years, by the time you get it, it might already be on its last legs, right? So you might not get this 20 years, you might not get this 10 years of an inverter perspective. From a battery standpoint, it depends on the type of battery, right? And it depends on the manufacturer of the battery. So, if it is like a tubular, tubular batteries, so not the lithium-ion ones, typically what we see in the market is between 2 to 3 years before the batteries have to be replaced, or before you have to sort of replace the contents of the battery. So you might still keep the battery, but just replace the contents of the battery. So we typically see about 2 to 3 years of those. From a lithium-ion battery, now not all lithium-ion batteries are the same, so it's good to understand the different brands. It's typically about the charge-discharge cycle. So how frequent do you use those batteries? On the low end, we see 5 years on the low end of your lithium-ion battery, and obviously on the high end, we see 10 to 15 years, so depending on it. So it sort of varies a lot, but which is why it's very, very important to buy your systems from reputable people that you can hold to the warranties, right? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? We've actually seen some suppliers that if there's any issues with your system during the warranty period, they would replace it without even any questions. They want to try and fix it. Like, look, it doesn't work. We'll give you a new one, and you start the warranty again, right? So quite important to get the right type of provider. But those are the typical ranges that you will see in terms of your system. Now, people might not have had this experience. Sometimes this is not because of the system, but it's because of the way it's been installed, right? So, for example, if there was no earthing done, there was no arrestor, the thunder strikes, your system has damaged. It's not that the system wasn't going to last long. It's just purely because of you've installed it poorly, right? So very, very important that the lowest common factor of your system is how badly it was installed. So if you installed it long, then you can get to the actual manufacturer's operating period. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining this session. We're having a bit of network issues, but then I want to use this opportunity to introduce to you My SME app by Ecobank. My SME app is our one-stop digital solution for businesses that you can use for account opening. It's a one-stop platform where you can use for your payments, collections, and then with at the tips of your finger, you can send your QR code to your customers that you're doing businesses with, telling them to make payments to you. Also, on My SME app, once you've downloaded the app, you can get your account number within 5 minutes. All you have to do is input your details for both registered businesses and non-registered business. If you're a non-registered business, you just need to fill in your details, your business name, your supposed business name, and your residential, your utility, your address rather, pardon me, and your phone number. Once you've done that and you input your signature, you get your account number almost immediately. For registered businesses, you need to input your details, put up your signature, and then you get your account number. After you have done that, you just need to upload your basic documents, and then everything is fine from there. I think we have Abraham on the call now.
Yes.
Abraham, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you. Jumoke, can you hear me? Yes, I can. Sorry for the network glitch, and we can take the last question before we round off. Sure. All right, Abraham, thank you so much. The last question is, what is the maintenance cost involved, especially for heavy equipment industries? You know, earlier you had mentioned you know, how if you can put some things on, just regulate what you're putting on, what you're putting off. Now, talking about heavy equipment industries, what is the maintenance cost for maintaining their solar panels?
No, so it's a really good question. So I said there's really no limitation as to where you can put solar system, right? So we've seen entire factories, cement factories being run on solar. We've seen installations as large as 100 megawatts for a specific client, right? So the size of the system can really cater for whatever situation that you find. But obviously on the smaller scale, then you might want to prioritize those. So first thing, that there's no limitation in terms of the scale of systems that you can deploy, right? That being said, maintenance becomes even more important as the system gets larger, right? The reason is you need a large system for specific purposes, right? So if you have a cement factory, your main cement mixer might have a minimum load requirement, and so if you're not hitting that minimum load requirement, then you have a bit of an issue. So, in terms of how we see the maintenance cost, it's typically a percentage of the capex, right? That you'd put into what your annual maintenance cost is. We typically see somewhere between sort of 1 to 5% of the capex is what your annual maintenance cost is. So it's not, it's not terrible, right? But obviously, if you're putting in a sort of $1 million system, then that's about 50K, right? So it's still a bit sizable from an annual perspective. So that's typically the range we see, 1 to 5%. But also, I said it's typically what we find is the larger systems are usually got into service providers, and so there's typically like a service contract, right, that comes with it embedded in, and so that the as long as you're paying your service contract, then the company that's taking care of that services can provide it effectively, if not further. And what does that look like? This is cleaning the solar panels, checking the electrical fittings, monitoring for any faults. So those big systems typically already have ways of guiding you towards what the fault is. So if there's any issue, the systems are intelligent enough to let you know, hey, like this is exactly what is wrong, and this is what you need to do to remedy the system, even before the fault is noticeable by the end customer. Right. So I said typically we see sort of somewhere between 1 to 5% of the capex cost, but it's sometimes charged per kilowatt hour, so sort of 0.0 cents or something if it's a foreign currency. So that's how it's typically charged for the maintenance of those large systems. But I think the most important thing is that when you compare the maintenance cost of a solar system, when you compare that to the maintenance cost of a gas system, or the maintenance cost of a diesel generator, you find that your maintenance is significantly lower in the solar systems, and also your replacement period is much longer, right? So if you have a diesel generator, it doesn't matter how well you maintain it, in less than 5 years you have to replace it, right? If you want to keep working an optimal period. With a gas generator, you might replace the turbines as well, probably every 5 years, right? But with the solar system, if you get a really good system, you don't have to replace anything for at least 10 years, potentially even up to 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abraham. Thank you so much for joining and taking all our questions. They were indeed very, very helpful. I myself have taken a lot from it. And thank you to everyone for joining. Let me quickly add that don't forget to download the SME app. I'm sure you heard me earlier. My SME app is really your one-stop. You need it for your business. It's very easy. Transactions at your fingertips. I also want to add that there is a survey link in the chat box. So please please use the link and let's have your feedback. Thank you so much, Abraham. Have a fantastic day. And to our wonderful SMEs, thank you for joining, and we look forward to having you in our next episode. Please enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.
No, thank you so much, Jumoke, for organizing. It was very, very useful. I really appreciated it. I hope everyone has learned something new today. I think what EcoBank is doing in my SME series is truly transformational. I think this is going above and beyond from a banking perspective, because I really focus on how do they help the banks, the SMEs do better, right? So whether it's the renewable energy series today, or if it's the marketing series, or any of those things, I think all of those things are quite important in helping you drive in your business. So super thanks to the EcoBank team, Simi, Jumoke, Moboye and the rest. I think Zainab as well. You guys have done excellent, and I also look forward to seeing how we can sort of keep on helping your customers as time progresses. I think a bunch of people sort of asked for my contact. I think if you can reach out to your EcoBank team, I'm sure they would have it, and so very very happy for you to contact me through them and just sort of take any sort of questions accordingly. But yes, so thank you very much. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Really appreciate it and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye. You can scan on the link, the scan to scan to download, pardon me. It's on your screen. So if you're trying to download the MySME app very easily right now, you can scan on your screen and download the SME app. And if you're trying to reach Mr. Abraham, like he said, you can reach out to the team at EcoBank and they'll definitely send you his details. Thank you very much.